Tonight's demo is going to be these antique style pepper grinders, which I get from Penn State. The club gets a little bit of a discount at Penn State. They have quantity discounts, and if you buy quantities, you get the quantity discount and then the club discount on top of that. And they have flat rate shipping. There's a number of places that I found online you can purchase them. However, they all seem to come from Penn State. So I find Penn State to be the most economical place to get them. They're simple, they're kind of fun to make, and people really seem to like them. Anyway, let's get going and get these out of the way. Start with a square block of wood that's about 3 inches square by about 4 inches tall. You don't want the finished piece to be any taller than 4 inches. So I cut the block anywhere from 4 1/4 to 4 1/2 so that I can put tenons on each end to mount in the chuck. I also have made a template that you can tape to the top if you're just doing a few or one. That shows where to drill the holes, pilot holes for the mounting screws. And basically all you do is you find the center of your block so you can true it up like you would be mounting between centers. Use an awl and center the template on the block, tape it down, take it to your drill press or using a hand drill. Drill a 7/64 inch hole. You can go as deep as you want for the pilot, and now when you get ready to mount the mechanism will be centered on the hole that you drill through the block to allow the pepper to fall through. Since I do a number of them at a time, I made a little template gauge, I guess you would call it, that's the same diameter as the paper template. The piece on the back here is the exact size of the hole, which I drill as a 1/16. The instructions call for 1 inch. Doesn't really make any difference. It's a snug fit. So then I can just pop it in at the drill press, and I've got holes pre-drilled for aligning, and I don't have to do a lot of taping. It just saves me a little time in a production mode when I'm doing 15 or 20 at a time. So I have a blank that has been turned around between centers with a tenon on each end, which you mount in the chuck. And I'm not going to crank down and snug it up real tight at this point, because I saw a video that talked about that, and if you crank down tight and do as most people say, rotate, crank, and rotate the third time to make sure it's good and tight, what you're doing is you're crushing the fibers in the tenon with uneven pressure as you go around. And then if you have to remount a blank in the chuck, you've taken it out and need to put it back for some reason, you do that same method, you're recrushing those fibers, and that's why sometimes when you put it back in, it doesn't run true. So using what Peg said last month, take your finger, push on the center, and turn it just a little bit as you go around. And it takes a number of turns, but it's worth, to me, the extra time to snug it up a little bit at a time, and you just keep going around until it basically doesn't want to go anymore. And then you know you're tight. So it's that simple. And now we're going to get ready to drill the hole through. And I use these machinist centering bits, they call them. Get them from Harbor Freight. They're, I don't know, $6, $7, $8 come in a pack that has all different sizes. And so you can see here, the different sizes, from small to big. And the nice thing about them is they're short, they're hefty, they don't flex when you go to start a hole. So it's going to start it true. It's not like a regular drill bit that may want to wander on you, or a Forstner bit that has a diamond point, not a round point, to start the hole and wants to sometimes chatter when you first put it in. So just simply put it in, tighten it up, bring it up, and now we can start drilling it in. Just making a little bit of a pilot hole. It's kind of doing the same thing that Peg did with the using a skew or a point tool and putting a little dimple in. I just prefer using this. So then we take and put in a 1 1/16 inch bit. In my case, 1 inch is fine. Come on, open up. And what I'm going to do is going to drill down as far as the bit will go. Now, I turned my speed up a little bit to start the initial cut. I find it runs a little bit truer and smoother when it starts. And then as I build up, get in just a little bit, then I turn it down to a much slower speed for the cutting. The other thing I do is I go 5 revolutions of the tailstock handle and then back it out. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I'm going to back it out and clear it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so forth as we go all the way as far as it will go. Now we're halfway through, or a little over halfway through the piece. Now we're going to take and flip it around and do the other side. Okay, putting the centering bit back in. Turn the blank around and start the tightening process again. And this process is the same as what we did on the other end. By drilling it a little over halfway and then coming back from the other side, I'm going to get a much truer, straighter hole. And then in addition, if it is misaligned a little bit in the center, nobody's going to know it. So that's the reason for not drilling all the way through, but coming back and doing it from each end. And we're through. Now, take the quill out. Get it out of the way. And I can reach in, and I have, unbelievable, couldn't have done better if I'd tried. You can't really see it, but trust me, there is no ridge in there. It is a perfectly straight hole all the way through. Now this is going to be the bottom of the piece, so while I've still got it in the chuck, I'm going to turn the tenon off and turn the base concave so that it sits flat on a surface and won't rock. So for that, I use my trusty bowl gouge, face shield, and we'll see how move the tailstock of hair. It doesn't take much of a concave to get this, but I just like doing it. I think when people pick it up and turn it over and look at the bottom, it makes it a little bit nicer look than if it were just flat. Now at this stage of the game, I would sand this through 400 grit, and then I would be done with the bottom other than the finish. Now, you can buy an expanding mandrel to turn these, but I use cones. So I'm going to put this cone back in. It's marked for the number 1 jaws. So there's my number 1 jaws. I'm going to put it in and do the sneak up on it tightening. And this has been turned for a while, sitting around, has not been retrued. And let's see how true it's running. It's off a hair, but not by much, and that could just be wood movement. The base feels pretty true. So I want to take and just touch this up just a hair. With a face shield on. There we go. Now the base, the bottom goes there. And I use normally a one-way live center for the tailstock, which comes with a cone that goes on the end, which is pretty nice for just sticking the piece back in. And when I trued up the blank, I didn't make it absolutely perfectly round because I knew I was going to have to come back and touch it up. So, but now it's centered in the 2 holes. So it's going to run as true as it can to start with. But if you don't have the one-way, And I take and make a series of cones. Have made, this is not a cone, but you get the idea. If you have a one-way and you want to mount a cone like this on it, you can take, and there's a couple of options. You can go to Tractor Supply. They sell nuts that are 3/4 by 10 thread, which fits the one way. Drill a hole, epoxy a nut in, and it will screw on. So you can make all kinds of little goodies for tailstock support. This one has a thread of 1 1/4/8, which is my spindle thread. I have an adapter that fits on the one way, 3/4 10, and a 1/8 or 1 1/4/8 thread. So you can just screw that in. I find these very handy. I started out doing the nuts, and then I decided, you know, if I make it this way, I can use it on the headstock as well as the tailstock. And then that would just screw on, and you could have a cone giving you a little more room. If you don't have the one way, and you have just and it fell on the floor somewhere, so let me find it. If you have the older style, I should say, live centers, this is a third party that I've had for years and years and years. The Jet, and I don't know if the Powermatic came with it or not, but it was one that was similar, a little bit bigger, a little heftier, but the principle is the same. You can take and drill out a piece of, this is just 2x4, you can drill it out the same diameter as your live center, and when you drill it out, the dimple from the Forstner bit will act as a center, and so you can just slip it over and tighten it up, and now you've made yourself a mandrel or a cone center that you can use for this and basically anything else you want. So we're going to use that tonight. And now it's just a matter of turning off this tenon, which I'm going to basically take down with a parting tool. And the nice thing about using the cone centers is, or the wood for the center is you can go into it a little bit and it doesn't hurt anything. Doesn't hurt the tool at all. And I'm running pretty true, but I want to finish rounding this up. You don't want to make this any smaller in diameter than 2.5 inches. So anywhere between 3 and 2.5 inches, I find is a good size. So just taking it down. You can make these as fancy as you want with beads and coves and all. I prefer to keep them simple. I like being able to pick them up and hold them in the middle and not have to wrap my hands around beads. So I generally keep them fairly simple. Now that we have it round into a good size, what I'm going to do is come in, and I don't know if you'll be able to see it or not since I'm using walnut, but right here is my hole, my pilot hole. So I'm going to put a mark right there and just roughly draw a line through the other side of the pilot hole, which is right there. Now that's telling me that I don't want to go down to that line as I round over the top. And I'm going to put a little bead on the top here. So I want to stay back probably a good 1/8 of an inch. So that's about as far as I want to go. Right there. So back with the face shield, the tool, and I'm going to use my detail gouge, and I'm going to come back, and this is arbitrary, whatever you like, somewhere right about there, put a little mark, and just kind of round this over. Nothing fancy. Like I say, I like them. I like to use the KISS principle, keep them simple, stupid. So we put a little bead. And I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom. This is going to be just a 2 bead. Round it over. And now I'm just going to not make it in the center per se, but start just making a little bit of a cove, but not equally proportioned. Like I say, although you can, and I have done those, but tonight we're just going to do this because we want to make it quick. And basically we're done with the shape. Come back and sand that. Probably could have done a little bit better job of the cut to get it a little smoother, but as the Brits say, shaping paper is a very handy device, and sometimes I find it just about as quick to sand, starting with around 80 or 100 grit, than to spend a lot of time finessing the cut and trying to get to where I can start with 220. It's just a personal preference. How you get there is a personal thing and up to you. You know, it's nobody has ever said, oh, what grit sandpaper did you start with to get it smooth? At this stage of the game, I would come back and sand it, like I say, through 400. Sand the top, and you should be able to pull the cone out. And for sanding, and just do a touch here just to give you the idea, that is pressed on that wood. It's holding it enough so that I can sand that, and I would take it through all the grits. So once you get it sanded, and I use a salad bowl finish for finishing, basically any finish you want to put on, as long as you let it cure, is going to be food safe. The pepper is going to go through the hole, so you can take and I'll put a little mineral oil, or if I'm using the salad bowl finish, I'll just go ahead and stick some in there. By the time it's sells or I give it to somebody, it's fully cured and is food safe. So now let's go ahead and mount the mechanism, and then we'll be done. These are really simple to put together. They take a couple minutes or so. Comes with a packet with 2 screws in it, the mechanism, and a set of instructions should you decide you want to use them. First thing you do is take the screws out, set them aside, take the knob off and remove the handle, because the handle is shipped on backwards, so we need to be able to turn that around. I like to take a screw and dip it in a little bit of wax, old woodworker's trick for threading screws into wood. Take the screw, put it in the hole, and then find the first pilot hole and just simply screw it in. But on this first one, I don't screw it down absolutely tight, because I want the mechanism to be able to swing around the arc of that screw, and it just makes it easier to find the hole, the pilot hole, for the second screw, because it will find itself. Once you find it, just screw it in, if I can, and screw this one down tight all the way. You can use a power screwdriver or impact driver. Just make sure you don't over tighten and strip out the wood. Then go back and tighten up the first screw so that it's nice and snug. Then I have found that the little nuts that hold the handle on and the tension on the adjustment mechanism can come loose with use, and I just hate having to keep retightening, and I would hate for somebody using one that I made to have to keep retightening. So I picked up this Loctite thread locker, removable type. It comes in 2 flavors. The other one is a permanent. You want the removable, you just take and put a little bitty dab on the end of the threads, screw it on, and then of course once it sets, the knob is not going to come off. You take off the top knob, I remove the spring, put a little dab on those threads, put the spring back on, and put the knob back on, and tighten it down probably about halfway, because all it's doing is holding tension on that spring, so that as you adjust the grind with the little flat washer knob, it'll let it pop back up or be held down. Hope you all enjoyed it.